the last 4 years, I could closely witness the democratic backslides or the continued authoritarian rule in most SDC partner countries. We witnessed populistic rhetorics, misinformation being spread, weak rule of law, but also continued corruption and nepotism. We also witness in the people different tendencies. There is a certain disenchantment of people with democratic institutions. At the same time, they also often and across the globe take the streets to make their points and voice and make claims. So all these greatly affects SDC partners in governance programming. It affects state institutions and their bureaucracies, how they are able to function, the quality of their work on public administration and service delivery. They are also themselves consolidating the concentration of power, which is concerning from a governance point of view. It also affects civil society. We have been speaking of a shrinking space or a contested space for civil society. We see civil society is not one block, is not homogeneous, and there are different voices there which are more or less heard, more or less included. And among those voices, we see that civil society organizations who would like to participate to policy dialogue, who would like to voice concerns of marginalized groups, who would like to ask accountability on the way governance is undertaken in the countries. Those voices are less and less included. They are delegitimized by state authorities who don't see the point in responding and showing accountability. It also affects local government institutions as our partners in several governance programs. Local governance institutions see themselves entangled in these power games, and they are maybe less able to respond and to be accountable to citizens' claims in the communities. This was a learning journey which took different steps over the last 2 years, and in which we really wanted to integrate different perspectives from the peace, from the gender equality, and from the governance and inclusion perspective. So one important element we looked at was about the narrative of authoritarian states saying we are developmental states, we're effective states, and leave us alone with democratic principles, human rights protection. We are delivering on economic development, and this is what matters to the people. And this narrative has some appeal in a number of countries. So we really felt we need to look a bit more in depth into this narrative and to have responses to it. So with the support of the Institute of Development Studies, we have an issue paper exploring this narrative and really showing that so-called developmental authoritarian states might have tangible economic progress, but this progress is mostly unequal, and it's not sustainable, because once they reach middle-income country, this very state-led way of economic progress is not sustainable. Then we also looked at the links between two important concepts at SDC. One concept is fragility and working in fragile contexts. So how does that resonate to our discussion on authoritarianism? And there we see a number of overlaps, but also maybe different approaches. And it's interesting to see how these interrelate and can influence each other. And another deep look we had is at what does it mean, authoritarian governance? What are the typologies of authoritarian governance? And I will not take you into this conceptual classification, but what I keep from that is that we need to recall the historical trajectories that countries had in their type of governance. Some countries have been ruled with autocratic manner since ever and didn't really establish democratic institutions. While others have done some progress in establishing democratic, or a lot of progress in establishing democratic institutions, and this has lasted a number of years, but in the last decade we see gradual declines or even one-off disruptions like in Myanmar this year. And finally, we have these young democracies which still hold on with their democratic institutions, but they face a lot of pressures in these times of global downturns of democracy. And this has, I think, for us an importance because it helps us to understand the political cultures that we encounter in the countries where we work. And it helps us to set our expectations right in terms of the capacities of the institutions and in terms of the behavior, the citizenship behavior of the people. Are they used to engage with authorities, to formulate their claims and participate in advocacy? Are they used to raise voices? And are they aware how to exercise influence on decision making? What are the mechanisms to check on power which have been used in the past? And how can we make sure that these are improved in quality and more accountable and transparent? So I think these recognition of the historical trajectory of countries is an important element which should accompany us. And the journey will continue with a deeper look at gender equality and gender narratives in authoritarian contexts, because we also see that in those contexts there are important concerns in terms of gender equality, backslides coming along, authoritarian and democratic backslides, but also sometimes rhetorics using gender equality as a flagship to make to build legitimacy. So a very interesting perspective also to give to that topic in the second half of this year. SDC takes a systemic approach to governance. So formal democratic institutions play key roles and have important powers to play in a systemic approach. These establish the mechanisms to elect people's representatives or to sanction their performance through elections. These ensure the rule of law through the judiciary. These adapt legislative frameworks to new challenges and decide on public funds. So I think we cannot overcome these formal institutions. They are really part of this governance system. At the same time, we are also very aware these are the structures, but what matters is the quality of their work and how the governance processes unfold. What role the actors play to shape these institutions to provide democratic governance. And there we need to understand how they really function, who has influence, also considering informal actors. But I would really say for a system of checks and balances, we cannot overcome formal democratic institutions in our approach and understanding of a political system. Now there are risks with this. There are risks because we see that in many instances, these institutions, we have the feeling they are more mimicking democracy than really playing along democratic principles. Yes, I think it's important to be aware of that. But we believe through gradual changes within the institutions, but also outside of the institutions, a balanced approach between working with institutions and with broader society actors is the better way to influence the quality of governance. The relevance of citizen engagement and citizen participation is not questioned. They remain, in a human rights-based approach, a critical basis for democratic governance, and we need to continue strengthening citizen engagement. Now there are some emerging needs or more acute needs that we are observing, also considering these democratic backslides. So we see an increased need for protection for those civil society partners who engage on delicate issues of governance, but also claiming human rights, or in sectoral work, sometimes the only fact of bringing a different perspective or criticizing a certain manner of providing services can cause them harm. So the protection is an emerging point. Then we also witnessed that civil society is often not very well organized between different stakeholder groups who share similar priorities but work a little bit in silos. So it's more and more important to help civil society organizations to connect better, to build alliances for more effective engagement, especially for policy advocacy. And then something we have been also discussing in the framework of the OECD DAC group working on civil society is about the need to enhance the accountability of civil society and the quality of its communication with constituencies. They need to sometimes a little bit better at communicating with donors or doing their policy advocacy, but not very well understood from the constituencies. And these are placed against them because they are at times losing the confidence of the people, or they can be easily attacked by voices who would delegitimize civil society organizations. And finally, I would also say, in our work of citizens' participation and engagement, we should really continue investing in citizenship education and put more emphasis on information, media, and digital literacy, so that people really have all the competencies to apprehend the public sphere, the realities, and to find a way to take influence. I realized at least the tremendous influence that media have on how people are informed, how people give meaning to facts, and how people build opinions and take decisions. So the media not only impact people, but also they shape the public debate. They shape the public agenda, how state institutions engage on policy issues, and how they justify their actions to the public. So these are really crucial intermediaries. So if we want to seek increased accountability from state and market institutions, we need multiple actors working towards this, and media are a crucial actor in this. Of course, media are not perfect. They are in many contexts actually not fully playing the role they should play. They are not independent enough. They are not pluralistic enough in displaying different opinions. they don't often give voice to all parts of society, but this is an important role we believe is unavoidable, and there are opportunities to engage with media willing to play this key role in democratic governance. Well, having two small children, direct democracy is not always working, but I also witness the importance of transparency, of responsiveness, why decisions are taken in a certain manner, and consultation. So I think I tried.